Happy Sunday, everyone. I am Renee, and I'm here with our special guest, which we are going to get to in a minute, but I'm going to mention you, Rik. We're here with our special guest, Mr. Rik Childs. I'm really excited for you all to hear from him today. But before we get to that, I'm going to just again welcome everyone to today, Navigating the Gap. And autism in real time is our focus. And today's, well, the month of April is special. We're almost done with the month of April, but the month of April has been set aside for Autism Acceptance Month. It used to be Autism Awareness Month, but they changed it because the focus, they want the focus to not just for people to be aware that that autism is here, but they want people to accept what comes with being with having autism or being on the spectrum and all the things that play into that. So now the Autism Acceptance Month is dedicated to fostering inclusion, funding research, which is very important, and elevating, not alleviating, elevating autistic voices. And that is happening in real time. And so April 2nd is actually the day that autism is celebrated, but the whole month is celebrated. And the focus shifts towards acceptance, providing support, and creating opportunities rather than just awareness. And I will say, to speak to the autistic voices being elevated, is if you, for social media, for me, I've learned a lot, especially since I have an older child. My son is 21. And so a lot of information that I used to get was about younger kids. And so I've learned a lot from young adults who are on social media and saying, hey, this is how I want you to see me. And this is what's important to me. And I've been able to take that information and employ it or engage it with my own child. So he's older, and honestly, some of those things I didn't know was important to him versus mommy saying, I need you to do this right now. He would prefer me to say, hey, can you do this? And just that simple change did make a change. And I learned that from a young adult that's on social media, and he's informing people of how he would like to be treated. So I think that it's working, shining a light on it. I'm excited about having this conversation today. I think one of the things that I like to do, Rik, is whenever I'm in a group or in a situation where we're talking about autism or the spectrum or anything, I'm always like with my pencil taking notes. So if you see me like for a second with my head down, I'm like putting notes in my phone because there's so many things you don't know, you don't even consider. So I like to like have a mindset of learning whenever and I know I'm going to glean a lot from you. I'm ready. So anybody that's listening to this, have a mindset of being a student today. We want to just kind of like absorb. I love that is how it is. Like we don't have a lot of gatekeepers of the information. Where you're not a gate. You're literally like opening up the gate today. And Rik, you're going to share with us about being a father, being a African American father, like all those things, and husband and a father, like parents, and the whole gamut. So in case I didn't mention that, I wanted to say that. So I'm gonna pause for a second because now I'm gonna switch. We did our what do you call it, like little news awareness, and now we're gonna jump into a conversation. We're gonna start with our special guest, Rik. You introducing yourself first, and then I'm just gonna ask you to share your heart with us today.
All right. Well, thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Navigating the Gap, Autism in Real Time. I love the title, and it applies so much to the journey that I've been on along with my wife. So for me, I'm 63 and I have a 16-year-old child that's on the spectrum. I'm going to start from the beginning. So when he was born, he's our miracle child because before he was born, we were told that we would have complications, that he might not make it. And we because of that we had to make a decision right there in the doctor's office. And because the decision we made, um, the father spoke to me and said, "We don't quit, we finish."
Mm.
So the decision was made right then and there to bring him into this world. We didn't know he was a boy. We didn't know he was going. We just know we were having a child. So once he was brought here, happy, healthy, all of the things. But around the age of 2, we started seeing different things, different challenges. And as being, parents to a young child, we have 2 daughters, but having a son, not knowing what was going on, we went through a challenging years. I would say from 2 to about 8, so many different things that we had to deal with, that we weren't ready for, but we handled it because we knew it was for the best interests of our son. So even from that point on, when I say from age 2 to 8, and I'll just be real, we had challenges like, we had to leave our church because
Mm.
he couldn't be, he was it, so one of the things with his special needs is that he's ADHD along with high functioning, autism. So sound irritates him.
Mm.
So we didn't know this as much because when we would be in service, we would be in the baby room. It was soundproof. We didn't have any, signs or issues. But then once he became 2, then he had to leave the baby room. And that's when we really started to see things. We saw things before,
Yeah.
but we really started to see it in the way that as we traveled, you know, through this journey,
Hmm.
that we had to make decisions, and we end up having to leave church and find another way to be able to worship where our child could be involved. So we were in search, for a sanctuary that would know how to deal with him. Because even when we put him in children's church, there were issues. My wife and I would be in, service, and next thing I know, the doors open up and they're bringing our child to us because they didn't know how to deal with him in children's church.
Wow.
So that was a challenge. Um, just go from church and go out if we're out somewhere with him because of the noise. And it really didn't dawn on me till years later, and we got the diagnosis after age 8. Was
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we didn't. That's what I'm saying. We went from 2 to 8 when we
Without a diagnosis.
out a diagnosis. Everybody's giving us what they thought, how they felt. And this is where I was, because my wife is in the medical field. She has a better grasp of what she thought or think was going on.
Uh-huh.
But for me, I was more in denial,
Mhm.
because, as a father with your first son, you're thinking about sports and all these things that you're going to do with him. And those were challenges. So when I go back to not just being able to take him to church, but when we would take him out somewhere, and it didn't dawn on us, we take him to places like Chuck E. Cheese. And
Okay.
instead of him wanting to run in, he wanted to run away. As soon as you open them doors, I don't know if anybody's been to Chuck E. Cheese, but when you open
Absolutely.
the doors, the first thing you hear is kids yelling and screaming. And he
Hmm.
was trying to get away from that. But
Wow.
we didn't still didn't dawn on us that sound was a thing. And then it really made me, Renee, go back to when he was born. So, and I'll remember this, to this day. He was laying on my wife's chest in the hospital room, and somebody had dropped something way down the hall,
Hmm.
and it was very faint to us, but he jumped. And it
Really?
just, yeah, he jumped as if it was in the room. But I didn't, I didn't think about it until years later,
Yeah.
when we found out that sound was what irritated him and made him, seem like he was uh, um, being bad, but he was really trying to get away from it. It was irritating him.
Yeah.
So, as we went through these journey, through this journey from 2 to 8, he was put out of daycares, out of schools, because they didn't know how to deal with him or handle him. You know,
And you got no one came to you and like recognized anything and said, "Hey, why don't you check this out?" None of that happened.
no, because in doing that journey, we went to try to find out what was going on with him, and they were saying because of his age, they couldn't diagnose at a certain age and all of that. We did hearing tests, we did different things through that process, but we
Okay.
never got a diagnosis. The diagnosis came, Renee, when we went to Kennedy Krieger, and I don't know if Kennedy Krieger, if anybody's in the special needs community or anything like that, knows that this is a well-renowned school for special needs, that
Okay.
people come from all over the world. So as I'm
Yeah.
speaking about this, we
Okay.
know, first and foremost, how the Father will take care of you, will make things, and will
Yeah.
make a way for you.
Yes.
And we had got we had got an appointment, but it was like a year out
Oh
to
my
go.
gosh.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was like crazy, but it was a year out.
Yeah.
So somebody, I don't know if somebody canceled or something. So we end up, when my wife had made the appointment, end up going, like a week after making the appointment or 2 weeks after making the appointment.
Wow.
We didn't have to wait for a year.
Oh my
So Kenny
goodness.
Cruz is in Baltimore, so we went up there, and like I said, this is after years and years of all of the challenges and all of the
Yeah.
things. And I mean, even to the point where we would sit in rooms with professionals that had all these letters after their names, and they seemed like they didn't even know what was going on with our child
That
and couldn't
is
tell us,
that
you
had to
know.
be frustrating.
Oh, it was so frustrating. So, but then when we get to Kennedy Krieger, and we meet with doctors. One doctor, and I'm gonna say this, and it's not to take away from anyone, but you have to have, in some areas and sometimes, you have to have people that can relate to you, that
Absolutely.
have to look like you or understand you. We can say, you know, we are in a place where we understand, but you don't understand unless you're in that vein, you're in that skin. You don't
Right.
know that. So we met with a doctor and we met with a psychiatrist, and they looked like us. They understood.
Okay.
So when we met with the
And
doctor,
that was not that was I'm sorry, but that
Mhm.
was important to you and your wife. That was important
Oh,
because
yeah, it was important because the thing is, we went through from age 2 to 8
right.
hearing from everybody.
Mhm.
And there was some things that really didn't apply, and there was
Right.
some things that we just didn't believe, in, until we got a diagnosis, and we never got a diagnosis. We just got a lot of talk.
Amazing.
So when we got to Kennedy Krieger, and we met with the doctor, and she and what we know, when God puts you on a journey, he's going to put the right people. You're going to connect with the right people. So
Absolutely.
she had the example. She had a daughter that was just like our son, but she was in college. So when I say relation, understanding, when
Yeah.
someone can tell you about something that they've lived through and they've gone through,
Yeah.
then you're more comfortable and you can understand. So she understood. She told us, and I'll never forget it. Renee, and I was in that office. I broke down. I broke
Mm,
down because finally had a diagnosis.
exactly.
Told
Yep.
us exactly what was going on with our son. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't a
Mhm.
maybe. It was a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And when you carry something for so long, and the way it went from 2 to 8, Renee, it could have broke my marriage up.
Oh my
It
goodness.
trying to,
Absolutely.
because there were things that we had to make sure we were on the same page, but we still had to be, husband and wife. We
Right.
still had to, be parents.
Right.
And when I got the diagnosis, and like I said again, when I broke down, it was not just because the relief, but now I have a mission. I
Mm,
know what we need to do
Yeah.
and how we need to approach it. So when, she told us, and then we met with the psychiatrist, and it was the same thing, it was just a confirmation. And then leaving there, we knew now this is what we have to do. This is what
Right.
we're dealing with. So then now we're
Amazing. Let me
yeah,
let me um let me stop you there for a second, Rick, because um it is important, and I don't know if people know how important it is to get a diagnosis. I kind of came up from the school of, the thought was, don't let them test your child, don't let them, like them.
right.
It was just kind of like, but the flip side of that is getting that information
Hmm.
is almost equally as important. I mean, of course, you don't want anybody just labeling your child in a negative way, but getting
Right.
that diagnosis helps you navigate where you're going. I think. What do you think about the importance of getting that diagnosis or as early as possible?
Oh, well, I mean, when you get it as early as possible, then it allows you to be able to make a game plan, put the right things in place, because it's not about medication. It's not about, just the school. It's about one, having a team. See, my wife and I, we're very strong on having a team. It's not just me and her. It's his teachers, it's his doctors, it's his extended family, it's
Mhm.
friends that we trust and know that they understand him, and they know that uh they'll have his best interest. So I'm gonna say, and I'm glad you said that, Renee, about the diagnosis. What's so important, and as you listen to me talk, I'm just giving you experience, but I'm gonna tell
Right.
you, the leader in all of this is my wife, Tiffany,
Yeah.
because the fact I always call her, she's the pit bull for special needs,
Yes. Yes,
because
she is.
she, like I said,
She's
all I
helped
do
me,
is
so I
show up.
know.
Oh, so that's why I said I follow, I understand, but I'm still a part of it.
Yeah.
And but when I need to know something, she's the one that gives me the direction and lets me know what's going on. So
Love it.
diagnosis was one of the key things. So
Mhm.
for our children, let me say that again. For our children, diagnosis is so important,
Yeah.
because our son was diagnosed with ADHD,
Hmm.
and also with high functioning autism,
Okay.
sensory processing. So if his IEP is saying ADHD is his diagnosis, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Autism, there's a difference.
Yes.
And I can go deeper into that, but again, the diagnosis matters, and especially to our people, it matters,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because there's a different way that each one is approached.
Yes.
So that's something I learned from my wife, to make sure that we understand as we move forward with our son, that his diagnosis is autism,
Got
not
you.
something else.
And I'm gonna say this because I had an experience with that, but today we want to hear from you, Rick. But I'm gonna say I'm making points because we'll come back on another time so you can dive deeper into
Okay.
that too, because it affects everything. And what you're saying in a way, but you're affecting the IEP, the support that they get in school. Like, it's so many different things. But continue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said again, this is 16 plus years of what I'm sharing here in probably
Yeah.
about an hour. So I'm going to give you bits and pieces, and I would be glad to come back, or if anybody, wants to reach out to you or to myself, I'll be glad, to expand on that. But I just know that through the experience of going through one, getting a diagnosis, now we know what direction we need to go. Now we know when we sit down, with the county that we're in, that we're getting the right services for them.
That's good.
So now I'm gonna jump to that part.
Okay.
So when we got to where we would do the IEP meetings,
Hmm.
okay, and this is where the difference is, where I'm gonna tell you where I felt it in the beginning. One, when we would go to the meetings, would be my wife and myself, and when everyone, after they introduced themselves and would talk, they were talking to my wife.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
like I wasn't there. That went on several times in the meeting until I finally said in the meeting that there's Mrs. Childs, but there's also Mr. Childs.
Oh my goodness. I love that. But you had to do it.
Yeah, and because I mean, and I understand why. It may be a situation where they don't normally see the father there,
Okay.
but again, the father is there. So
Right.
therefore, talk to me, not just to my wife,
Mm-hmm.
not just, as if I'm not there. And like I said again, my wife is the lead in this,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
but I'm always in the meetings, I'm always in the workshops, I'm always speaking up,
Wow.
not just a silent partner.
I love
So,
that.
and so once we got past that part, and we went through some of the challenges, and it was challenges because a lot of things that people don't understand is that there are so many parts to it. It's the school, it's how they get to school, it's
Yes.
what happens when they're in school, and then
Mm-hmm.
after school. So there's so many different parts to it that we have to, as parents, make sure that everything is in place. So that's where, again, the support for my wife and myself was so important when we would show in the meetings
Yeah.
that this is what we need, this is what we want. But for me, once I got past that part of now, they see me, they
Mm-hmm.
know I'm there, and they
Mm-hmm.
understand now I'm being addressed. It's not,
Mm.
and I'm speaking in the meetings.
Powerful.
And there are times where, like I said, you have to speak up because your child better than anybody else,
Absolutely.
better than
Absolutely.
anyone else. So that was one of the challenges for me. So I know in the beginning, as we were talking, and I know you had some questions for me, and some of the questions I know were asking, how did certain things affect me, as or was I getting support, or and I'm as a father or as a man is
Yeah.
coming through. To be honest with you, Renee, um, I didn't have the support. I'm gonna say I had the support, but first and foremost, the support was from God. Okay,
Okay.
support was from God.
That's first. Okay.
When He gave us, "We don't quit, we finish." That was the beginning.
That's
Okay,
powerful.
because if we had made a decision in that office based off of what man said, we wouldn't be sitting here now having this conversation.
Mm. Oh my
So
goodness.
as we
That's real.
go this. Yeah, it is. And as we go through this, there was so many parts to it once we got past the diagnosis. So now we're in IEP meetings. We get him placed in a school that we thought was going to help him,
Okay.
but it was the wrong placement, and
Hmm.
it did.
Okay.
So finally, so once we went through that process, we found another school that he was placed in, and he started to really thrive and
Okay. Oh,
continue to thrive.
now let me ask you, Rick, how long did it take you for the first placement before you had to get to the next placement?
I would say probably about 2 years. Yeah,
Wow.
it's probably
Okay.
about 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and that made a difference, because it was like we had to really not really start all over, but we had to kind of make adjustments.
Right.
And it was challenging because again, no matter where or what was going on,
Hmm.
uh, Tiffany and I always showed up together.
I love
It
that.
was never, whether it was, events or anything like that, we always showed up together.
Yeah.
And
Powerful.
yeah, and that, let's say again, that's so important because for me, like I said in the beginning, I didn't, I was in denial. I was definitely in denial because I couldn't see, what my wife was seeing, you know,
Mm.
or I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
I didn't want
Yeah.
to see it. But then once I saw, and then once I heard the diagnosis, it's game on now.
Okay.
Again, it's mission time. So, what was so beautiful again, Renee, that God does not make mistakes. He puts you in the right place at the right
Yeah.
time. So, during this journey, my wife and I started really focusing on our health. And I bring that
Okay.
up because that was integral in helping our son.
Mm.
So, not only just the school or the sessions, that he would receive to help him in different areas. One of the things that we had to understand was how could we help him outside of that.
Okay.
And one of the things to help him, one, because like I said, being ADHD, he couldn't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't focus as well as he needed to.
Right.
So going through that challenge took some time.
Okay.
um, and it took us certain places, certain things we needed to do and go through. But then what really ended up happening, again, like I said, because Tiffany and I had started our health journey, it put us in
Okay.
a place where when we were told that in order for our son to help him with what he was dealing with, they recommended medication.
Okay.
Um, and because of, like I said, we were going through these challenges, if we weren't where we were at that time with our health, what we were doing for
Mm-hmm.
our, we probably would have opted for medication, but we said no. And I'm so glad that we did. And this was at around the age of 8 when this decision was made. And when it was made, we decided to help him naturally through his nutrition. One of the things I think a lot of people miss is that some things that can aggravate certain challenges in special needs is what you put in your system.
Absolutely. Talk about it.
Sugar,
Yes.
dyes, all of these different things that is normal in our society that we give our children, does not work for children with special needs.
Right.
And we saw that, with our son, because if he got a certain amount of sugar in his system, we could see him multiply in his movement. You
Mm.
know, not his focus was not even there
Right.
because and it took a little bit of time for us to see that, because that was something that happened before we started our health journey. But when we started our health journey, we had a better understanding and we said no to the medication
Okay.
at that point in time, and we're still no to this day.
Okay.
And so we, like I said, again, had to, one, show him what we were doing that would help him and make sure that he understood, because one day he's going to be on his own, but we want
Right.
him to be able to navigate that. um
Absolutely. So Rick, back to something you said that was really important is that you and Tiff started your own before you even got to this point where medication was offered and everything. You and Tiff had started your own like health journey, and you're not saying you guys just started going to the gym. Like, you went deep and researched and learned a lot of things, or maybe you already knew it. I don't know.
mhm,
So when you had to when that when that question came for your son,
mhm.
you feel like that part of your journey equipped you to be able to say, no, that's not what he needs. It's because you all were already had already kind of delved in, was doing it for yourself, had did the research about a lot of different um, health, because you said you went natural. You guys went
Yes.
natural. So that prepared you for the question of should he be on medication?
Yeah.
What do you think about parents? And I know I want you to tell your whole story. I'm just going to ask this question.
Mhm.
What about parents who have not gone on a journey, like, and not sure where to go, what to do? What would you say to them? Like, when they're asked that question, because that question is pretty much offered to all of us. Do you
Right.
want to, and I want to say all of us because everybody's different. That's why they call it a spectrum. But if they offer you the medication, what would you say is one thing that we can do to help ourselves educate ourselves to make that decision?
Well, I mean, when you have a diagnosis, to know that there are certain things that for instance, your child shouldn't have or don't need when it comes to what they eat on a daily basis. You know, it I would say it's hard because I've had that question before.
Hmm.
But when I've heard both sides of it. I've heard the side of people that their children are on medication,
Okay.
and don't get me wrong, when it's needed, it's needed.
Right.
It's not either or, it might be both,
Mm.
that will help.
Okay.
So I'm not a advocate of saying no to medication, because
Okay.
like you said, there are different levels of the spectrum.
Yeah.
There are different things that may be needed, at certain stages. And don't get me wrong, that it's not um the path that we chose.
Hmm.
There's still challenges, but what we understand is that when those challenges arise, the first thing we think about and ask, what did you eat? What did
Mm. Okay.
Okay? When
Yeah.
we see that he's not as focused, we know that he's had a little bit too much of certain things. So, and so that's just having an understanding. But if someone was to ask me that, so we went holistic for ourselves. So it allowed us to, one, have the information, and then two, have the awareness to say, hey, this, can help, this can help, this won't help. And then once you start this regiment and you start seeing the changes and you start seeing the results from it, and you understand that, see, and that's even a challenge in itself, because he's 16 now. So we want to make sure that he's taking it on his own, not that
Mm.
we're standing over top of him, not making sure that we have to ask him 20 times, in the morning, did you take this? Did you take this? We
Right.
know that if certain things happen, if there's a challenge at school, first thing my wife and I ask each other, did he, have his stuff
Okay.
morning?
Okay.
Did he, you know, and so we understand it.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if I answered the question,
No,
but
yeah, you did. I mean, yes, you definitely answered the question. And it's just it's a challenge across the board. It's going to
oh
constantly
yeah,
be a challenge for all of us. But
hmm
I like how you answered the question, why, how you initially addressed it, and the fact that you don't think one size fits all. Like,
right,
people have to find what works for them, and then now you're also talking about, now that he's 16, how you're progressing with
hmm
your decision as the parents, but now teaching him how to also be engaged in taking his own medication, which I can imagine that might be a
hmm
challenge also. So
right. So and that's the other thing. So and you know me, Renee. So words are very big with me, and changing words are very big with me. So one of the things that we tell him, what he's taking is activation. It's not, medication or anything like that, because it's not. It's all natural products. It's
right,
not anything pharmaceutical. So that was
absolutely,
the key for, for him to understand that. And anybody that we talk to is the same thing, because even if someone was to choose medication, it's still a level to it. They have to adjust it and find, what works for them, you
right,
know, in that process. And that's even for anybody.
yeah,
We all at some point have to take medication for whatever. But what I do understand from going through this journey, medication masks and does not go to the area that it really needs to support.
absolutely,
That's the thing that kind of just really stood out to me when that was brought to our attention,
hmm,
that it was recommended, and then we said no to that. And I'm
okay,
glad that we did, say that, because again, you could choose one or the other, and you still have to go through that journey to see, to make sure how it's working, if it's doing what you believe it's supposed to do,
yeah,
and that's really all you can do.
yeah.
You just have to go through the journey with it. So
Which goes back to what you said at the beginning, is the parent is the expert. You
yeah,
are the expert for that, for your child. So even paying attention, doing your own research and following and seeing how medications are or whatever it is, you're the
Hmm.
expert, and we can never take ourselves off of that position.
Hmm.
I think that's
Oh yeah.
important.
Most definitely. And I've been blessed, one, to be in a place where Tiff and I, we've gone to many workshops, we've been to many seminars that have allowed us to, one, interact with other parents,
Hmm.
interact with educators, connect with folks. And again, like I said, we are firm believers on team, in
Okay.
making sure that we
Hmm.
have a team that supports our son. It's not
Yes.
just coming from us. Whether, he was in martial arts, the master that he was being trained under was part of the team. If he acted up, he was going to hear from us, and he was going to hear from him. You
Okay.
know, and we needed him to, one, hear it from different perspectives, understand from different perspectives. It's not just coming from mommy and daddy. It's not just coming from, grandpa and grandma. It's coming from somebody outside,
Yeah.
but also they're connected. So one of the things that was really important, for me, Renee, is that I would share my story
Hmm.
of the fathers, just in general, not knowing that they had special needs children, or
Oh.
some, most of the. So like on my job, when I would talk to, and I never had a problem sharing that. That was the biggest thing that I learned through this journey, is that when I shared my testimony
Yeah.
with other men, I would find out they had the same story.
Hmm.
What that allowed me to know now is I have a resource. I have somebody I can reach out to and ask when it's time for our son to start driving, and
Hmm.
their son is in their 30s. What school did you go to? What steps did you take?
Right. Right.
Just talking, and then talking to these men, and you can see the emotion coming
Mm.
from them, because just like myself, um and it wasn't intentional, but it's just the way that it happened.
Yeah.
I was alone on this journey as a man. So when
Mm.
I say that, let me say it again. I was
Yeah.
alone on this journey as a man.
Mm.
Not saying that I was by myself, but I was doing this thing as a man by myself. And I had to understand, I had to learn, I had to make mistakes. Because I'll give you an example. And I had a young brother tell me this, and it was so powerful. So my son and I, we were in the barbershop, and I'm very protective of him. So, if most people know, when you're in a barbershop with a bunch of men, you're going to hear things. There's going to be things that's going to be said.
Yeah.
So my thing is, in our community, because like I said, again, I'm 63, so I'm old school.
Yeah.
So it's about being strong. It's about being, how you present yourself.
Hmm.
So, um, so then I'm just gonna say my son Cameron. We're in the barbershop.
Okay.
So he is, because of who he is. He's such a loving person.
Yeah.
He doesn't see the bad in people. So
Mm.
that's how he approaches things. So in the barbershop, around all these men, he tells me he loves me and he wants to hug me.
Oh, of course.
And me being, like I said, being old school, I kind of felt awkward.
Hmm.
I said it back, but I was kind of apprehensive because I'm always conscious of how I present myself out in public, especially around men,
Okay.
you know. So I shared that. I was in
Wow.
a men's ministry group, and I shared that with the group. And young brother told me, he said that that should have been the time for me to embrace him, for the other men that was in the barbershop,
Mm.
for them to see it and to receive it.
Right.
And that was so powerful to me.
Yeah.
So and I bring that up, and I say that, Renee, because there are things that I have to teach Cameron how to navigate this world, not
Mm.
only as a man, but as a
Hmm.
black
Yes, of course.
man.
Yeah.
Because his because of his challenges that some people may not understand
Yeah.
that could come out. They may deem it as um, um, maybe being disruptive, maybe not understanding his emotions,
Yeah.
him not responding the
Mm-hmm.
way, because you have to, in some ways, sometimes you, like you said earlier, the way that you present yourself or the way you say things, you
Yeah.
may have to adjust and change. And if we're dealing in a situation where when you look at him, if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
experience with special needs children, you would not know. You
Right.
would not know.
Right. It's
So
true.
you would see him as he's what, six, about almost 6 feet now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know he's stretched out. So that's what
Woo.
you see, but we would
Absolutely.
have to explain to him when we're out, because a lot of times when we're out, I'm always in teaching mode,
Yes.
whether it's um if we're shopping, or he may say something to someone, maybe a lady,
Okay.
um he might say something like, that's nice, she
Yeah.
may have a nice shirt on, he'll say something, I'm conscious of her boyfriend or husband could be right there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So I
I
need him
do.
to understand that you can't approach everybody in the same way.
Yeah.
You have to, one of the things I tell them all the time is you have to read the room. You have to read the room.
Oh my God. And that is so, that is such a, that is a challenge to
Hmm.
require of someone who doesn't read. And I'm not even talking about your son. I'm just saying in general,
Right.
that they may not read things the same way. That's why they make such a big deal about neurodivergent. Like it's different, like
Mhm.
it's different. Like I might read it and say I can see three things and I can understand what those three people are doing. They'll read the room and and I'm talking, referring to my own son, about
Mhm.
reading the room, because that is such a good point that you bring up, because
Mhm.
I'm like, um, but it is there. So let me
Yeah.
say this:
Hmm.
the teaching mode, I love that,
Hmm.
because it's not that they're not capable of reading the room, but
Right.
it is bringing the attention to it.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
is like that, constantly teaching to read the room and what that means.
Yeah.
And because that ability is there. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just maybe sometimes needing to be brought to the forefront, and like you said, being in teacher mode. I love this conversation, Rick, because I mean, you're so on point about it. And people, even with parents, it's like you think like they're just, oh, they're just walking through the mall, they're just going to the airport. But you're right, like those,
Mhm.
if you have a child that's has special needs or something, you are in constant teaching, looking, preparing them, talking to them about.
Oh yeah.
And you're, yeah, so go ahead, go back to your read the room, because I just jumped on that.
Oh no, no, thank you for that. Because that's the thing that's so important when he's out and about. I want him to understand, that you can be polite to people, you
Yeah.
can be courteous to people, but there's times, because I remember one time that uh he was staying with his grandmother, and
Okay.
and I'm trying to think, was he even at the time, was he even diagnosed? So he was out with her at a park, and this is the thing where he he believes the good in everyone, and he wants to try to save everyone.
Yeah.
So there was a couple in the park, and they were arguing, and he got away from my mother, from his grandmother, and ran up to the people and was telling them to stop arguing.
Oh wow.
So,
Wow.
and I bring this, I say this because that's the thing that he focuses sometimes, that so much on what the negative that could be around him,
Okay.
that could irritate him,
Yeah.
and I have to teach him, you have to, sometimes you just have to mind your business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That part.
It just comes down to really
Yeah.
what it has to be.
Yes.
um but again, like I said, one of the things earlier on, to teach him, about stranger danger. you know,
Mm.
that and said, and I bring these things up because as a man that's out in this world, that's moving around,
Right.
I see these things. I know that if something's going on over here, that it's not my business unless it really needs to be my business.
Yeah.
And I need him to know that when he's out and about, his head needs to be on a swivel.
Yes.
This is the man's perspective.
Yes.
I don't know if that's what my wife does with him. She may do that, but I
Yeah.
just know as his father,
Mm-hmm.
with the understanding that he will be on his own. This is
Yeah.
what we pray about, that he
Yes.
will be on his own. I want
Of
him to be
course.
able to navigate these things.
Yes.
He tells us he wants to, he wants to go to college in California.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
yeah, that's a far long way for us to have to
Yeah.
be so worried about what he's doing or what he's going through. And
Mm-hmm.
then if he is having challenges for us to travel to get to him. So it's
Right.
going to take, a minute for us to really be comfortable. Let's get to the driving part. That's even the other part.
Yeah.
Wants to drive and we're in the process of teaching him now. And I
Okay.
talked to, one of my co-workers. I talked to him who has a son that's driving that's on the spectrum also.
Okay, good.
So he's giving me information, that I can use also, for our son before he really starts driving. But we have him drive little spaces around on the property and stuff that helps him to really get, accustomed to it. So it's just these everyday things that we do, whether it's, teaching him to cook, teaching him to make sure that
Right.
okay, he's doing that. And I think all these things I'm saying you would do with any child. But when
Yes.
you're dealing with a child with special needs, sometimes there are some things that because of, there's so many things that might be going through their mind
Yes.
that they're focused on that what I've seen just with my son, what I've seen that he can tend to forget or
Absolutely.
leave undone. And
Absolutely.
instead of me, jumping up and down, what I do is I just remind them, put your keys in the same place
That's
so that
beautiful.
when you find them, make sure to put your stuff back so that you can, when you go look for it, you don't get frustrated, and now it's a whole situation.
I
So if
love
you,
that.
be repetitious, you repeat everything every
Yes.
day, that'll allow you one to be able to stay, and keep up with those things. So, for me, again, as his father, these are the things that I'm constantly focused on,
Hmm.
worried about, now what, he's going out on his own, with some friends,
Okay.
with, the family, members and stuff like that. Um, and we felt comfortable because one, I think as far as again the team effort
Right.
has helped him, but we also know who he's with is
Yeah.
going, because socializing is so important also.
So
Um,
important.
it's so important and it's really helped him. And he's such a leader. That's the other thing that I like. He won't be led, and
Love
that's
that.
what I try to teach him. You
Yeah.
know, be a follower, be a leader. So for
Yes.
me, again, coming through this journey of one doing this for the first time, not having someone to really talk to and reach out to, it has been a journey. And say again, as I look at, he's 16 now, and
Hmm.
to go through, what we've gone through,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it from time to time. We'll just laugh about different things,
Right. Right.
certain situations that have happened, that we've been able to come through. So, but
Powerful.
yeah, but again, one of the things I know too, with one of the questions that you were asking, what I look for as far as being able for me myself to be able to help other men, um,
Hmm.
one come out of that place of you're doing it by yourself,
Hmm.
or that you can reach out to someone that has gone through this journey. I've had some men that I have talked to and have given, some type of direction or just give them my testimony,
Okay.
because the things that we do outside of just, being Cameron's parents, we involve him in, our business side, we involve him in. He
Yeah.
knows probably more about it than we do. And we love to see him move and do the actions
That's
that
so
he's
good.
doing, you
Mm-hmm.
and it just makes us feel even more comfortable with him being on his own.
That is, and I think you're speaking to um like so many different areas. The driving was something that I wanted to pick your brain about, but
Uh-huh.
we'll do that later. But even the preparing him for going out on his own, talking about that, and preparing him to be a productive citizen in the
Yes.
world is priceless. Like that's important.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, it is because even us as adults that are not dealing with maybe some of the challenges that our children are dealing with, we had challenges.
Yeah.
We have to, we go through things.
Hmm.
So even as we're going through them, we have to understand. So how can we help, our children with that same thing? Making sure that he understands that he can't buy certain things to eat, and make that a part of his staple nutrition
Yeah.
because it's not going to help him.
Right.
It's going to hurt him more than it's going to help him. So when he's out on his own and he's going shopping, see, this is the thing that I enjoy. I can teach him things, he'll remember it. So when we go, for instance, so as far as for Team Childs, I'm the head of nutrition. What
Okay.
that means is I do a lot of the cooking, the planning, and the shopping. And when I do shopping, he's with me. So when we're out, we have this app we use called, it's a Yuka app, and what it does is you can scan the barcode
Mm.
on different foods and it'll give you a rating if it's good or bad.
Oh.
So I'll have him out and I'll have him use that app. So if there's certain things, like before we started using the app, there were certain things that he would eat, certain things that he would get. So
Mm-hmm.
then after we scanned them and we saw that they didn't scan good, then he made a decision, I'm not going to eat it anymore.
Oh wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Really?
So just showing him even in the way that we teach him about serving sizes. We teach him about reading the labels and looking at the ingredients on certain
Yeah.
products. He knows things that he's allergic to. So he
Mm-hmm.
knows what to steer away from. So it's just
Wow.
that repetition,
Mm-hmm.
making light of different things, that's going to help him. That's
Yeah.
been, my mission, my part in this. So again, like I said, you know, Tiffany leads this when
Yes.
it comes to Cam,
Yeah.
but again, I play my part and I support her each and every way that I can. But then I take the part as far as where the father needs to step in and make sure that when he gets to be a father himself, that
Mm-hmm.
he can reflect back on some of the things that we experienced together, that will help him. So,
Powerful. I love that you said, like, you pretty much hit all the parts of what any parent thinks about
mhm,
their child. Like even just
mhm,
now when you talked about him getting married and being a father, I mean,
um,
it's so powerful to hear it come from you. And I know that your child is that helps him to hear it come from it. Like you said, Tiff is that she's but you guys are doing it together, and to hear it from both is
mhm,
just powerful. And we know that fathers have a role that God has clearly designed for them to have. And so I really want to just say um how important this conversation has been to me as a mom and
mhm,
of a boy. And And just I'm sure anybody that's listening, I'm gonna give you a chance to speak. I know if you're not done your story, I still want to hear it, but
Mhm.
that you're speaking to men, like any man that, like you talked about, who you give your testimony to, men in, like, moms and women's lives who are mothers and single or married,
Mhm.
who are taking care of a child that is has a special need, and maybe the thought is that it's for the woman to do all those details and think about all those things, and men may not feel like, I'm just going to hang back and
Mhm.
not get involved. That puts a struggle on everybody.
Yes.
And the child also gets that uneven.
Mhm.
And not that it has to be 100 I'm not talking about percentages here, but the child needs both, is
Yes.
what I'm saying. And so I really appreciate you sharing today, and I appreciate you being a voice for our men, and just putting it out there, like, you're just like, this is what I was doing, this is what it is.
Mhm.
And supporting your queen like that is powerful, Rik. I just want you to know that. So go on. What else do you? I don't want to cut you off.
No, no, you didn't cut me off at all. Is but I thank you again for allowing me to share this. What one of the things that you said about supporting my queen is so important is that you have to understand in the dynamics of a relationship who can deal with the most.
Mm,
So I'm better under pressure. So
okay.
I understand that when she says she needs a break, she gets a break.
Yeah.
She needs me to handle it, I handle it.
Mm,
So there, and that's just recognizing and understanding that once we got the diagnosis, it was mission time.
mm,
It became a mission for me, to understand how am I going to be able to help him,
mm,
and I would say not only through the teaching part and being aware of what he may need. I'm gonna say the key, also is the what he needs in his temple. Okay,
mm,
what
mm-hmm.
that's so important. And I say that, Renee, because um, you know, I see, like, for instance, in schools they feed children and they have access to things. Now, I'm sure a lot of them, as far as their meal plans and all of that are good, but they still have cookies and cakes
Yeah.
and things that's accessible in the school,
Yeah.
and especially in a school that's full of special needs children.
Mm,
I don't know why. I don't seem to understand why there's not a connection to
right.
some of these things. And I'm not saying that that's a big part of it, but if it aggravates or it activates a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
have to,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the first thing that Tiff and I ask each other. We look and we say, okay, Cam has had a bad day.
Mm,
He's had a challenge. What did he have? Or what didn't he take this morning?
okay.
That's the first thing. And I think a lot of people miss that, because I even say for us, when we started our health challenge,
Yeah.
what came, what really came to light for us was that people go through illnesses and go through different feelings, and sometimes they don't understand. It might have been something that they were eating. It might have been something that they just didn't agree with them,
Yeah.
but they may go to the doctor and the doctor will go through they won't ask, because that's not what they were trained to do,
Mm-hmm.
have to eat. They're just going to look at whatever the symptoms are. And I
Right.
only say that because it connects with why certain things happen when we're eating. And now, because food today is so highly processed,
Yes.
many chemicals, it's
Mm-hmm.
even worse. So now we're feeding. our children if we're not, because I know my parents weren't nutritionists. They gave
Right.
me what they thought was right.
Mm-hmm.
Years, like I said, when I started this health journey, I realized and found out that there were things that I was eating when I was younger that I shouldn't have been eating. That,
Mm.
that caused me to put weight on, and it caused me to feel a certain way, and it
Right.
caused me to go through different challenges.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so adamant about the nutrition side of it when it comes to our children, especially our special needs children, because I've seen what it has done, for our son,
Okay.
how it has helped him by navigating from certain things and making sure he's aware of what he can eat and cannot eat. And don't get me wrong, he still can enjoy himself.
Yeah.
Still has to be a serving size. It still has to be a recognizing what he's eating, what could happen from that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So,
Okay.
but yeah, like I said, I didn't want to go off on too much on that part of it, but it was, again, like I said, just something that's very important to me, that it makes me wonder sometimes through that part, do if people really understood, if they made just that adjustment,
Yeah.
differences that they would see.
Absolutely. And I mean, it also, like what you talked about, the team. I mean, having a good doctor is a doctor that is willing to talk about the natural things, but also having other people like you and Tiff are a part of my team. So I mean, when I didn't know about how, you know and I mean, how different vitamins, probiotics. I didn't know any of that and understand it. And just getting someone who you trust to explain things and understand. And food definitely, like I like how you said it activates things.
Yes.
You're not gonna say like, oh, they ate like a piece of pizza and it made them have something, but it
Hmm.
does activate things. And if you can avoid those things from being activated,
Hmm.
and for me, it was finding getting the homemade pizza dough from the grocery store and getting the homemade sauce versus and changing the red sauce because the red sauce was such a it was an activator to like reflux and
Hmm.
pain and different things. So that is a whole subject by itself. Like I know we can't jump in there, but you're touching on it, and I appreciate you touching on it, and educating, because the way that you guys educated me, I've been able to share it with some, family and not just family, but just um, different ones that are in the community who have children, and say, hey, have you thought about this vitamin or this thing, and they hadn't even heard about it. And
Right.
so it's just sharing and having opening up the conversation. And I that's what you did today, Rick. And I think you identified like 8 areas that you could go in and do a deep dive on each of those areas
Uh-huh.
alone, because we're all like hungry for more information, like, oh, I didn't even think about that, or it's just like it's it's um it's a gift to
Mhm.
have someone like you who will share and talk about, in even how from a man's perspective, because women are I'm gonna they're gonna take it a different way, they're gonna approach a situation a different way. And
Mhm.
so I'm glad that you brought that other part to the conversation, and that's why we wanted to hear a father's perspective, and that is really something that you've done that, and I so appreciate you for going on. I'm gonna have you share with anyone that is listening your some last words that you would like to leave today. And I just want to assure everyone, I haven't solidified this with Rick, but I believe he's gonna come back and share more stuff with us. But for
Yeah.
today, if you have something you would like to just like share your heart, or something you would like to leave with us,
Mhm.
please do.
Oh yeah. So yeah, again, words, and again, Renee, thank you so much for, like I said, having this platform and, just opening it up, for me to be able to speak because, you know, I, I shared a lot in this small period of time. Um, but it's probably some things that I've left off the table, and I've
Mhm.
definitely love to come back,
Yes.
and share. But I know that in this journey, as I continue to see, Cameron blossom, as I continue to see him grow, I'm, you know, I'm not marveled and I'm not surprised because when God is first, you'll never be last.
Mm.
So I understand that. And I know that my part, um, is lasting for him because one of the things that I know and I see is that he opens the door for his mother because he saw his father doing it.
That's
You know,
powerful.
there are so many things that I see him do that he repeats that I know that I have, brought to his attention or have taught him, to understand. And that's all I can ask for. You
Yeah.
know, that's all I can ask for. So, again, as I continue on this journey with him, the next stage of his growth is for him to be, again on his own. He still have a couple of years, but we want to make sure that he is ready and right, and we know he will be because again, he understands who he belongs to, and he understands that the Father is first and foremost. We make sure that he understands that. Even today, when we were out, he bought a Bible search book, like word search.
Oh yeah.
For him, to because he's into graphics, he loves drawing, and he's really good at it. But he loves to read too, and that's another blessing.
Mm-hmm.
We just what we do is we continue up to uplift him in these areas, so that he can to continue to grow and he has his own thing. Because again, I want him to learn from me, but I want him to be better than me.
Mm. Absolutely. That's powerful, Rick. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
a father's perspective and a husband and father's perspective, actually. And I really appreciate you coming today and sharing. And I look forward to hearing more from you. I mean, I listen, I love that you came and talked to me here, but I just feel like what you have to share and to say, many, many people need to hear. Many, many families, many, many men need to hear from your mouth to their ears to really like they can do this. And that's what I got from you today. Like it is possible to be on this journey with your child and your wife, your family, and journey it together. And I love that you shared that today. And I feel like that type of confidence and encouragement from you, it's not lost on me today. And thank you for coming and sharing that your life, your journey, not just your story, but really, like you said, your testimony. You're
Yeah.
living this thing. You guys are walking it out. And so I just want to thank you for that. I thank everybody that um, listened in today, to navigating the gap. You helped us navigate the gap today. Part of navigating the gap is really about, um, like you said, being in denial about some things, or just like thinking like, oh, I don't think I can do this. But navigating through that till you get to the place where you see what you need to see, like you said, read the room
Yeah.
and take ownership is for me, because once you take ownership, once you get the diagnosis, once you see what you really need to see, you can then make a plan and move forward. That's
Oh
what.
yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's all we needed because it was just, again, people were telling us what they thought. Even the professionals weren't telling us what we needed to hear or what we needed to know. And
Yeah.
that was what was so frustrating, But once
Ooh,
we got to that place that we knew, then it was game on. Like I said, you're not going to stop us.
right. Right. It's that powerful information. Come on.
Hmm.
And to not have it, come on, that just
Oh
trying
yeah.
to hold things up.
I mean, it was what it was funny to me was Renee. I was like, this is not anything new. So why you can't tell me
Right.
what you're seeing, what you've experienced, what you know,
Yep.
but people were quick to, you know, get rid of, not
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
That's what I saw more of than I saw, during that 2 to 8. That's what I really saw. People were more ready to not deal with than to deal with and to help.
It doesn't make sense though. I mean, but I agree with you on that. It doesn't. It's just like, why wouldn't you share that info? Like, I mean, you haven't seen. There's nothing new under the sun. You've seen this
Exactly.
before because the statistics show it's not
Mhm.
just us. It's lots of
Right.
other. So why
Mhm.
wouldn't you be able to share that in plain, just like in
Mhm.
plain language? Give you know.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
well, maybe we. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get the answer to that, but I think it is, in some ways it is getting better. And I think conversations like what you had today and
Mhm.
getting that conversation in the right person's ear is going to help people who will say, hey, wait a minute. It just brings your own, you to light. Once you hear something like what you just shared, is
Mhm.
to say, wait, let me see what I'm seeing, and let me go back and ask more questions. Or like you said, you went to, what was the name of that school you guys went to at the beginning? The Krieger.
Oh, Kennedy Krieger. Yeah.
Kennedy Krieger. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't know where, but
Mhm.
there in every state we have like a lot of different specialty
Mhm.
places, and we need to know about it. How to get that help that you need. So thank you, Rick. Thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing. We'll put out the information because I know people are gonna want to hear it again. And my prayer is for people that will listen, that will
Mhm.
hear this, that the ones that really need to hear that encouragement,
Yes.
that it'll get there. So if you guys are listening today, they, like they say, like, share, and subscribe. It just means it puts it back out there so others can hear it. Um, and I mean that. Like, I think that a lot of, our, I can just speak for my family, my people, like people that I know, would men that would benefit from your conversation. So um
All right.
and that's what we have. We're here. Navigating the Gap is here on Sundays at 5. We are talking definitely autism in real time, and there's so much conversation that
Yes.
I want to talk about somebody driving a car and what were those streets. But we'll talk about that. We'll put it on the side, but it's coming
Okay.
back because I
Okay.
definitely want to hear that too.
Oh, yeah. It's-
So what were you gonna? Did you have something you wanted to say?
no, no. I said I'll be glad to talk about that. That's yeah, that one is gonna be heavy for me. So
I know. I was the problem though on that one. I will say yeah, I started out as being a teacher, but
uh
then I said, let me find somebody I can hire to do this because
uh
and it has nothing to do with the diagnosis as much as it has to do with just me and being my first child and me having to teach them how to drive. I was a maniac. I was just like, he was like, you can take your keys back, lady, and I'm not doing this with you anymore. So
right. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not always them, it's us.
Mhm.
And I will
Right.
admit
Oh yeah.
it's me. So
That's it.
all right. So we're gonna go. This was a great conversation. Thank you, Mr. Rick Childs, for everything, for your conversation today. You can have the final words.
Um, I don't. Yeah, like I said, I look forward again to being a part of this conversation. Again, like I said, I know there was some things I probably left because this was 16 years of doing this journey together. But I just want to tell all the men out there that share your testimony. You know, you're listening to introvert. Okay. You're listening to someone that could easily just sit in the background and not say anything. But because I understood that, I have an assignment that I have to step up. So when I share my testimony with men, I find out that they have the same story I have. And that's so uplifting because now, you can talk to other men and help other men.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Hold right there, Rick.
All right.